4 capital fish suppers, just 99 pence. Beef mince, only 79 pence per pound. The price is right at Capital. For fridge and freezer foods.
Back a bit, love.
Use the new TruePrint envelope for great colour prints. And a free film every time. This car is built in a factory where everyone starts on the factory floor and where no one has ever been made redundant. By a company where the managing director dresses the same as the men on the line. This car has 100,000 miles or a 3-year warranty. We suspect these facts are not entirely unconnected.
If you need a loan for your next little indulgence, some methods of finance could mean you get a lot less for your money. So don't miss out by paying more interest than necessary. Talk it over with Bank of Scotland, a friend for life.
Tomorrow, where can you get up to 50% off lots of spring fashions? Goldberg's. Where else can you dress so well for so little?
Get up to speed in the race for business with the biggest supplier of cellular car phones. Motorola.
Meep, meep. Meep, meep.
Get your business on the road. Dial 100. Ask for free phone Motorola.
Hello there. You'll probably recognize me. And if you're interested in racing, you'll know there's a new paper around. It's called the Racing Post. And every day, it brings you more of everything that makes this sport great. True to form, there's a colour feature for tomorrow's big race. Let's see what they reckon to my chances. Typical. In that case, I'm off.
For real professional insight, pick up the Post.
On Ways and Means tonight, the new Secretary of State for Scotland, Malcolm Rifkin, gives his first major television interview. As the man responsible for employment and industry, what's he going to do to cut the lengthening dole queues and halt the country's industrial decline?
And we'll have the results of a specially commissioned opinion poll asking which party is best for Scotland. It's expected to make grim reading for the Tories. How will Malcolm Rifkin react? That's Ways and Means with the Secretary of State, tonight at 10:35.
That's in just over half an hour then, following the Scottish news headlines. Now, though, the news from ITN at 10 o'clock.
Russia's radioactivity reaches Britain. It's weak and safe. Soviet TV says Western media exaggerated and lied. The prison officers and the government try to make peace. Mrs. Thatcher tells Americans, I promise you'll be safe in Britain. And Royal Silhouette, the lasers ring out a welcome. Good evening. Radioactive fallout from the Soviet nuclear accident has reached Britain. Raised radiation levels were detected in the south of England as far west as Oxfordshire. The National Radiological Protection Board say concentrations of radioactive material are very low and people in the United Kingdom won't be placed at risk. Soviet television tonight accused the Western media of spreading slanderous inventions about the Chernobyl accident. But the Moscow Communist Party chief told West German television that radioactivity around the nuclear plant was still high, and he said, there is a dangerous zone which people cannot enter. He said the authorities were trying to prevent the spread of radioactivity by using helicopters to drop lead, sand, and neutron-absorbing chemicals onto the site. In Poland, about 200 people demonstrated in Rostov demanding more information. Some demonstrators' banners said, "Our children are getting killed." Romania, also in the Eastern Bloc, today reported radioactivity much over normal limits and, like Poland, started giving anti-radiation pills to all under 18s. Italy said children under 10 and pregnant women should not be given fresh milk and banned the sale of fresh green vegetables there.
Material from the Chernobyl nuclear disaster was detected in several parts of the southeast of England today. Minute particles of radiation were deposited on air filters at monitoring stations. The National Radiological Protection Board described the cloud as greatly diluted, with radiation only a fraction of that detected in Sweden. Last weekend, when the disaster was in its early stages, the cloud of radiation blew north and west. Scandinavia detected the fallout on Monday. By Tuesday, the wind was changing to the south and west. And by Wednesday, Switzerland was being affected. While wind has blown what appear to be new emissions from the damaged reactor southwards towards Turkey since then, the old cloud over Switzerland has been blown north and west to Britain while steadily losing its radioactive strength. The government's chief medical officer says the radiation cloud presents no danger to Britain. He said measurements taken from people returning from the Soviet Union were within safe limits, and further radiation checks will be made available to travellers from the area who may be worried. The British students who had been staying in Minsk and Kiev, relatively close to the damaged reactor, were given a clean bill of health when they arrived at Heathrow Airport, London, last night. The highest radiation readings were found on their clothes, some of which were confiscated.
We seem to have only been in contact with low-level contamination, except for the fact that, for example, a boy at the airport discovered that the seat of his trousers had, I think it was 400 beats a minute, whereas the safety standard we were told was 100 that they were setting then. And he reckoned that it was when he sat down on the wall outside the hotel, which means that there was a certain amount of fairly considerable radiation there.
After their examination, the relief of some of them early today was evident.
The Soviet Union hasn't given any new figures on the casualties at Chernobyl. It's still saying 2 were killed in the initial accident and 18 are seriously ill. Their television report tonight, criticizing Western media coverage, was the longest seen in the Soviet Union since the accident last weekend.
The Soviet Union's evening news bulletin is seen by millions, and tonight, halfway through the program, the newscaster had this to say.
Западные средства массовой информации распространяют клеветнические измышления по поводу аварии на Чернобыльской атомной станции. Некоторые страны демонстративно отзывают из Советского Союза своих граждан.
The interviewer then spoke to 2 British men outside the Hotel Russia in Moscow. He said they were a railway worker from Glasgow and a businessman from Devon. Their holiday firm had told them there'd been an atomic explosion, that Kiev had been evacuated, a great many people had died, and thousands were injured. Their lives were in danger.
And then we had to leave Moscow immediately for the United Kingdom.
Students from Britain who arrived home yesterday told Russian TV that they were leaving against their will and the West had made political propaganda out of the accident. The Russian TV pictures showed Britons preparing to board the British Airways flight from Moscow to London's Heathrow Airport.
In Washington, a second secretary at the Soviet embassy made an unprecedented appearance before a congressional committee to answer charges that Moscow's been too secretive about Chernobyl.
No one was more surprised than the House members themselves when, in response to their request, the Soviet embassy dispatched its second secretary to Capitol Hill to face their often tough questions.
It is, of course, a unique experience to appear before such a distinguished panel. I wish it were on a happier occasion.
For 2 hours, Vitaly Cherkin smoothly defended the official Russian position and gave their version of the latest news.
The radioactivity of the territory of the nuclear power station and the surrounding settlement dropped by 1.5 to 2 times. Medical assistance is administered to those affected, of whom 18 people are in a serious condition.
And he expressed Russian annoyance at Western press reports that hundreds, even thousands, might have died.
Well, let me put it this way. I find it a little offensive that some sources are very intent on asserting that there are much more than the number of casualties which were actually there. Aren't we talking about living people after all?
And I'm offering you the opportunity to totally, wholly put that
Thank you.
speculation
I've
to
had
rest.
that opportunity, and I can state most categorically that there are 2 people dead. As of May the 1st, there are 18 people in serious condition, and I hope they are being treated. And contrary to some people with a pessimistic outlook to life, I hope they will survive.
How could you have not warned Sweden, Norway, Poland, Finland, Austria, and all the rest of those surrounding countries? The world is appalled, Mr. Churkin.
It is my understanding that no harm was done, real harm in those countries which are adjacent to the Soviet Union, to the people who live there. And I would imagine, again, that first there was a desire to see what was really happening and what the consequences of that could be before you make any public announcements. Definitely.
The congressman continually asked the question, why did it happen?
It happened on April 26. Can you tell me in those same layman terms why the Challenger disaster happened?
It had been an unprecedented occasion, indicating how eager the Russians are to try to repair some of the political damage from the Chernobyl accident. But in the end, after 2 hours, little new had emerged.
British embassies in Eastern Europe are being sent special equipment so that they can do their own tests for radiation. It's already gone to the Soviet Union and Poland, the country which seems to have suffered the highest fallout outside the Ukraine. Some places